Hi there, and welcome to Peninsula Players Theatre presents the history of Peninsula Players Theatre. Audie, hello again.
Hi, Greg.
And today, as you can see, we have a title that says Turning the Page. And Audie, that was your idea.
It was, and as I was kind of going over the next few years, I thought we're really kind of turning the page because our company members are shifting with the Golden Dozen that was honored during the celebration of the 30th year. We're going to see new company members coming in. There is more fresh from Broadway shows, and Jim McKenzie and the other company members also just bring a fresh dynamic to everything. So I really felt it was a turning of the page.
And we're also going to do something which we haven't done for a while. We're going to cover 5 years from 1965 to 1969. So this will be a little different going forward. We're going to look at each of those years, but we basically going to cover highlights of those years, not every show. And Audie and I talked about what we thought was most notable about
Mhm.
each of those years, and that's what we'll cover. Again, they were doing 8 shows a summer, about one a week. Again, that doesn't
Mhm.
change, that continues. Though in 69, we do get a 7 show
Right. Yeah, they do
season,
something new at the end of 69.
at the
So,
end of which we'll talk about. And we also realize that there's many things that we won't be covering that hopefully we'll pick up later next week when we
mhm.
talk about specific people involved in these seasons. So here we go in
Okay.
1965. And one of the very first things that we have to talk about is the cook, the position of the cook.
Oh it is one of the crucial positions that needs to be filled each season, and a position that we cherish because it really is the energy of the company, not just physically, but just that the sense that we're taken care of, we're working hard and everything. Well, in 1965, they had trouble finding a cook,
Hmm.
and it was causing Tom Connors to have early gray hair. He was very stressed about it. There were ads placed every week in the Door County Advocate, and there was even ones in the Green Bay Press Gazette that said urgent, cook needed. And these were running up until a week before the show started. So it was a last minute fill in, and one of the reporters who stopped by to talk to Tom, who said he was happy when somebody called to inquire if there was a job available, and he said, do you want to cook? And they finally found their cook because of the actors equity agreements. You needed to have a cook, so if they didn't have a cook on site, they Tom kind of felt like, well, do I have to delay the opening of the season because I don't have a cook? So
That's a big deal. Is one of the things when I talk to people about what makes Peninsula Players unique. It's, of course, a combination of many things. But one of the elements that's incredibly important is that at mealtime, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, the whole company gathers together from their various workplaces and eats together, young and old, tech people and actors. It's a wonderful combination where we get to share with each other.
it really is, and it really makes the camaraderie and the feeling that you're all in it together, and especially for the interns to have a chance to mingle with an incoming director or an incoming designer who's there for a few weeks or a few days, just to meet them and
Mhm,
to have a conversation with them over a meal.
mhm,
And the greatest thing about our company members is that they're willing to share and have those conversations
and
as well. So
yeah. So we did get a cook and we did open the season. And Jim McKenzie, the executive producer, was there opening night on July 13th, which he did pretty much the rest of his career.
he did, and I know towards the end, I would always be excited, when I started, that he'd always arrive in his white coat and
Mhm.
in his white suit. So it was always nice, Jim, just to come up on stage and greet the audience and welcome them, and always give a little thank you to everybody before we kicked off the season.
And oftentimes it was an inspiring message.
Mhm.
And then and also going into the season, they were auditioning for singers and local talent.
They
Uh,
were, and it was nice. So whatever musicals they were doing, or maybe even a large show cast, they would hold auditions for those, and whatever musicians they may have needed as well. So it was a nice way to get the community involved and inspired. And it was just one of the reasons why the community embraced Peninsula Players so much as well, because they could become involved.
Yeah, and because a lot of these shows like South Pacific
Mhm.
or The Prime of Miss Jean Brody were large or needed children, et cetera, et
Mhm.
cetera.
Right.
And
Or
you,
and then the case of, a case of libel, it was some grown adults, like, and that's how Tom Birmingham became so affiliated. He was the principal at the local high school, and someone from the theater came looking for props and then said, we also need some extra people. Are you interested? And that's how he got kind of roped into there as well. So
yeah, the players definitely roped Tom Birmingham into the theater. And speaking of children, on July 24th, there was a children's show.
there was the UWGB Center Young People's Theater returned with a cast of 30 children, and they did a production of The Land of the Dragon. And it's always exciting to have that youth and that exuberance around there. And one of the acting company was so tickled that the kids were there that he and Kevin McKenzie did a little skit for them before they, before they performed as a thank you.
And that was a couple other notable new things that happened in 1965 were the Players' Pen started.
It did. And so this lovely tradition of a column in the local newspaper called the Players' Pen was started by the public relations person who was there. And it didn't appear every week that I could find, but it started. And so to give some of the little background information as to what's going on at the company, get, little chatty Cathy things about what's happening, a little bit more about the shows. And so it was kind of nice to see.
And
And
that was Mary Stabile.
Mary started it, and it's continued up and through the Resorter Reporter and Key to the Door up until just a couple of years ago.
Hmm. And you've been involved with that a
I
lot.
guess I have.
And the other thing that was, I thought that was pretty cool that year was the Starlights.
I love the Starlights. As you can see, it's one of my favorite things to paint. But our Moravian Starlights decorate the staircase that comes down from the upper parking lot, and they're around property, and they're these beautiful stained glass crafted by a local artisan, I believe, Shrador. I'm probably saying the name wrong, and I apologize. Craftsman, and they're just beautiful starlights. They add so much ambiance to the gardens at night, and just something that I fell in love with my first season. It was like, wow, these are so neat. And
And when we built the new theater, it was one of those things we
mhm,
wanted to put back and maintain
mhm,
that tradition, that line, because they're really pretty.
they are.
Yeah.
They are.
And so moving on to 1966, um, they looking for a director for this season. I think Kip Cohen was going to.
He was scheduled to arrive, and I found it very funny to read in one article in the same edition of the Door County Advocate that, oh, Kip and his wife are returning. She's going to choreograph and all this. And then this other little article that says, nope, he's not coming. He's got other commitments. So, okay. So
Yes.
they
Well,
were
as
looking.
we talked about Kip earlier, and as a reminder, he
Yeah.
went on to have an amazing career in the music industry.
He did, yes. So, he was off in New York doing what he was doing, and
So,
that happens. There's people that just can't make the commitment, or something else comes up.
right.
So they were looking, and they happened to somehow, and I don't know if it was a Westport connection through Jim, but they got a hold of Windsor Lewis to come out and direct that season. And Wink, as he was known affectionately, was his nickname. was raised in Iowa, grew, and then him and his family moved to a farming community in New York. So he really had a rural type of, was raised that way.
Mhm.
And he and his wife, Barbara Belgetti's, had a farm in upstate New York. And that's where they would go. They didn't live in the city very much. They would spend there. So I think the appeal of coming to Door County for the summer and also being in a summer stock environment again appealed to him. He was a very well-respected Broadway stage manager and has several credits for that. And then after he and Barbara got married, he switched more to directing. She was trying to get him interested into acting, but he preferred directing. And Barbara Belgetti's is the actress who originated the role of Maggie the Cat in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
Mm.
She starred in, was one of the children in I Remember Mama in films. And most people will remember her as the matriarch on Dallas. And she did win an Emmy Award portraying that role. So that was another kind of powerful theater couple.
Yes, and
And
he directed quite a few shows
he
on
did.
Broadway.
He came
Yeah.
in and directed 4 shows that season. And I found this lovely quote about his passion for directing. So I'm just going to read it real quick because I think it's, to me, the most creative part of directing is to take a few thin pages of dialogue and stage directions. If you've ever read a play, you'll know what I mean, and turning it into a living, breathing experience for the audience. Choosing the best actors, trying to interpret what the author meant. I find it much more interesting than acting, this building up of meaning. So it was.
Yes, that's great. I certainly understand that because being an actor and a director myself, they each have different rewards.
Mm-hmm.
And the reward of being a director, to be able to see the finished product on stage and what you see in your mind being made real, is so exciting.
Yeah.
Another thing I share with Windsor Lewis, this director, is sort of our nickname. He was Wink, and I was always known as Vinky.
Yes. And it
So,
was great. And he brought his dog, Big Sam. So Mary Gage, who was one of the performers in the company she was interviewed a few years later. And one of the memories, the fondest memory she has of being at Peninsula Players is being directed by Wink. And there's this nice photo of her and Wink and his dog, Big Sam. In the newspaper. So dogs and Peninsula Players. Yep.
oh
That's
yes, lots of animals have come through the Players, not just dogs and cats. But I remember there was one summer, there was also a hedgehog and an iguana.
and then the monkey from Inherit the Wind.
Right, right. Regular zoo. So also this year, 1966, there was a collaboration with the Roadstead Foundation.
Yes, so the next door neighbors, Hazel Bookbinder, has established the Roadstead Foundation, and they are bringing in seminars. So they're bringing in artists to have conversations about drama in the country. They are giving grants to playwrights and fellowships to have playwrights stay at the house during the summer and work on their plays.
I know at one time Mark Connolly was
Right.
there.
Yeah. Mark Connolly was there. He spoke, and then a couple and several other playwrights. So Dave Peterson will be among them. That comes in as a fellow and is there, as well as one of the the first playwright that they had in. I remember was went on to write and become an Emmy award-winning scriptwriter for Sesame Street.
Hmm.
He's one of the original writers from there. I just can't remember his name right now.
Mhm.
And but they were also involved in dance and bringing in films. And I know one of the playwrights that they brought in was a member of the Guthrie Theater and was working on something in that regard. So they would work on these scripts, and then the actors from Peninsula Players would come over and they'd host readings. And they would open these readings up to other members of the foundation. And Jim McKenzie would be there, and Tom Birmingham were members of that board. And so it was a real environment of artistic growth, not just for Door County, but for maybe perhaps these shows to go on either nationwide or to be performed in different regions. So it was just this real meld of artistic interest, including Madeline Turtellow in her School of Art.
And you mentioned Dave Peterson and what he came up with there.
Right. And when he was a fellow a few years later, he was writing some songs, putting together songs for Song of the Inland Sea, which then went on tour. But in 1966, that year, in collaboration with the Roadstead, Peninsula Players hosted a show of his that he had written about Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, based out of Baraboo. So
Mhm.
part of the Wisconsin Ideas Theater. Um, and he put together this story and songs called Ice Cream 7 Days a Week, which was, I guess, a circus tradition to try to keep the performers happy. When they were on the road with the circus, was to give them ice cream. And so it was this song and dance number, but it was a Monday night at Peninsula Players. And usually, that's a dark night for us. We don't perform. But the theater was opened up for this traveling company that's been going across the entire state. And for Door County audiences, they performed at Peninsula Players Theater. And it was a near capacity crowd. Everyone really had a great time. And the actors from the company of Peninsula Players really enjoyed it as well, because they said it was nice to see a performance and partake as an audience member. And was a nice change of pace for them. So,
Instead of
and
putting tears into it themselves.
right. And then if for those who might recognize Dave Peterson, he and Songs of the Inland Sea, that led to the formation of Heritage Ensemble, which was performing in the state park and eventually becomes Northern Sky Theater, which eventually becomes American Folklore Theater and then Northern
Mhm.
Sky.
Right,
So,
right. Interesting progression there.
yes.
And another interesting thing that happened that year was there was a Door County flag was produced.
There was, and I was so excited to find this. So the inspiration of the flag was Jack Bergstrom's, and Jack was the president of the Door County Chamber of Commerce for many years.
Mhm.
And Jack was also very supportive of Peninsula Players and was one of the board members during the year that we had the citizens group that took over the theater and formed the Door County Theater Foundation.
Mhm.
Jack was so proud of Door County that he wanted them to have their own flag. So he sparked this idea, and the artist Andrew Redman of Fish Creek put together a sketch, and he came up with this. But unfortunately, Jack passed away before it came to fruition. But so then James Ebison, a lawyer in Sturgeon Bay, took over, and he and Andy worked together on this, and they came up with a final design. In that year, they ran the flag up for the first time, with the Bergstrom family being able to hook it up and go up. So this logo is still in use today. It's 55 years old,
Mhm.
and it is a mariner's wheel and color coded. And inside the mariner's wheel are symbols of Door County's hospitality. They have a coffee pot for hospitality, and other symbols, including skis, factories, farms, woods. And in particular, on one spoke is a fiddle, as they said in there. I think it's a violin, and drama masks for Peninsula Music Festival and Peninsula Players Theater. So I was so tickled, and I want to thank the county clerk for sending us the artwork so we could share it with you today too.
Yes, and we're still using it today. So moving on to 1967, again, we wanted to update you on some news with Jim McKenzie
Mm.
because he was a little busy that year with show on
He
Broadway.
he did. He was producing a show on Broadway, and it opened in May, and then we did it at Peninsula Players then the following summer as well. So he was producing The Girl with the Freudian Slip with alumni. Bruce Hyde was a member of that cast, and that opened up on Broadway. And not only is he got Westport Country Playhouse, but he's also working with a theater company in Florida as
Hmm.
well now. So he's, Wisconsin, the East Coast, and now also down in Florida. He's an executive producer for a company down there.
I think it's
And
called the Royal. Poinciana Playhouse.
Poinciana, that was it. Yes.
Palm
I
Beach.
I was going through my mind.
Yeah, lots of P's.
Yes.
um, and the girl with the Freudian slip, I remember the star of that show was Alan Young, who
Mhm.
people will recognize later on. But also that year, he bought a movie house.
He did. He bought the Lake Cinema with Frank Butts of Sturgeon Bay and in Bailey's Harbor. And it was a real going to be art film house. So they were bringing in a lot of international films and not so much Hollywood contemporary works, although they did show The Graduate. But there was it was another exploration of, I'm going to say, an arm of the roadstead where there's arts in Door County and trying to build up and continue to build up the arts, and there's an appreciation for that. So with the symbolism of the flag of the arts being there, that Door County does have an appreciation for arts. And so thank you everybody for your support in that, because it's kind of nice to keep seeing it being built up.
Yes,
So,
and that movie house was like a big Quonset hut,
right.
and was still showing movies when I
Mhm.
started working at the Players, but it's gone now. I think there's
Yeah.
just an empty lot there.
I think so, yeah.
Um,
I did
uh,
get to see one film in there. So that was, it was kind of nice.
and you had mentioned Andrew Redman, an
Mhm.
artist who was partly responsible for the Door County flag, but that year in '67, we displayed some of his art.
We did. And it's at this time he was working on weathered wood panels. So he was salvaging barn wood and had wanted to rebuild his gallery at the time. And so at this time he was where the settlement courtyard inn was where what he had purchased after having been at the White Gull Inn for a little bit, and then they sold that and moved to this location. Well, Andy was doing artwork on wood panels with palette knife, and so the previous years we had done sculptures through Madeline Turtelo. So it's a continuation again of increasing awareness of the arts and arts appreciation. And I think that was held in the boathouse, because to hang paintings at Peninsula Players, I can't unless they were in the lodge.
Mhm.
I'm not sure where they were on display. If anybody knows, that'd be helpful. I'd like to know that. Um,
I think you also mentioned that there was artwork by some of the company members was displayed.
There was, including the cook. The cook was an aspiring artist. And what tickled me the most, Greg, was finding out that Bob Hooter of Green Bay, who was then going to go attend the Los Angeles Art Center, was the person who painted the beautiful Scandinavian decor on the building we call the chicken coop.
Mhm. Because I
And that
think he was living in it.
he was living in it. That was his housing cabin. And I know people would kind of look at me, people live in there. I said, they used to. My first season, the stage manager lived there. And I know box office managers have lived there. So it's the building between the box office and the kitchen. It looks like a chicken coop. I don't think chickens were ever in it.
Oh,
Um, but
and
he did the scroll work on the shutters for there. And I know about 15 so odd years ago, we had them repainted by one of our artists on property so that they would continue. But he was the original artist of that scroll work. And I know a lot of patrons, when they see that, will kind of go, oh, that's what she's talking
it's
about.
very quaint. It's very quaint. Oh, I would never want to live there. No. And also at the opening of the season, the actor Dan Scott returned. He was also known as Simon Scott
Mhm.
in the film and TV industry, and he came for opening, but he had another motive.
He did have another mission. At that was the previous winter is when Papa Fisher had passed away, and a few years before that, Mama Fisher had, and he was bringing Papa's ashes to join Mama's at in Bloomberg Cemetery in Peninsula State Park. So he was very close to the Fisher family. They were who gave him his start and encouraged his love of acting. And because he was in California, he would return
Mhm.
But he did come to opening night and did celebrate and was there, but he was also saying goodbye to a dear friend.
Mhm. And also that year in '67, Tom Birmingham took on the PR role.
He did, and it was because unfortunately Sally Mann, no, Sarah, uh, who was there the season before, she had an accident at home and she really banged herself up. She broke an ankle, broke a hip. And so Tom stepped in and started doing the publicity for that season. And he started taking over the Players Pen columns and writing those, as well as putting together all of the press releases and doing that for the company. And he
So
did that for a couple of seasons then.
we ensnared him even
We,
further.
we did, yes.
He did it of his own volition. So um,
Lucky us.
lucky. Oh, indeed. And also that year, we had some high school students.
We did. They had was a wonderful opportunity. They had those high school students who were interested in the arts from Algoma, Sturgeon Bay, as well as even to De Pere and Fond du Lac. They had set up a couple of different days for the students to come with their parents to the theater and kind of shadow the company members. So they got to attend rehearsal. They helped usher at night. They got to talk to the actors and the directors and were given backstage tours, and it was a ample and encouraging opportunity for them to see what life in the arts was like. And their parents then they all got to see the show that
Mhm.
evening. And it's a real continuation of things that we continue to do today with encouraging the arts. So our scholarship program, where we offer scholarships to graduating Door County students at the end of the year. We also work with the Hardy Gallery through their mentorship program. So if there's students that are interested in immersion into an arts, we'll work with that organization. And we've had a couple students come through who were interested in directing, and they've sat through the rehearsal process. But Eva has been, I think, a blessing to the costume shop, because she's been there about 3 seasons now through this program, learning and becoming immersed and helping the costume shop out. So,
And when the company is there on property, we always welcome people
mhm,
coming by. We can answer questions or show people around, because we want people to learn about us and about theater and
mm,
how it
right.
works. And,
Exactly.
and also that year, in August, there was an article about the National Geographic magazine was on
Right.
site and Indoor County.
Yes, one of the columnists for the Dark County Advocate was happened to be at Peninsula Players that evening and spotted the photographer. So I know that the National Geographic came out that year with, the Cape Cod of the Midwest is Dark County, and beautiful photo features. I don't think any of Peninsula Players was posted there, but it was exciting to know that the photographer was on site and taking images.
Yes. So that was 1967. We go to 1968. There are a couple things we can talk about there.
Yep.
One of them was that there was some show stories. They were going to do a show called Black Comedy,
Yes.
but
But one of the actors had a mishap of some kind, and I haven't figured out what yet, but he hurt his knee and I think tore his cartilage and was taken out of the rest of the season. Carl Benson was there at the time, and he was directing the show and the stage manager. And he thought, well, maybe if I had a microphone or an earbud in and a microphone off stage, somebody could feed me my lines and I could just do the role. So they were trying that out, and it wasn't going very well. And then Tuesday morning, Dennis Kennedy is woken by the stage manager, and he was like a little groggy. And the stage manager goes, Dennis, we're going to do love instead. We need to rehearse and get the show up by 8 o'clock tonight. So let's go.
oh my.
And they did it. They totally switched the show. They didn't do what they had planned, which was a larger cast. You pulled this together, the three actors, and they remounted Love. So this is one of the few times that they've redone a show within a year, but because of extraordinary circumstances. But
I bet they were on their toes then.
They were on their toes that week. Yes.
And another show that year, A Case of Libel,
Mhm.
well, had one of the cast members was Fred Brandt.
Which was yes, and it was so exciting. So Tom Birmingham was also in it, and some other community members, and to have Fred back and to have him on stage when he had such an intricate role in saving the theater, in forming the company, and all of that, it was just kind of nice to see his name again.
And there was an interesting little ad about for that show in the
Yes.
paper.
Yeah, there was like a little summons put it in the classified columns that people, you're summoned to the theater to come see this show. So it was a really a neat thing, and I'm pretty sure Tom Birmingham came up with that one.
Yeah, that was a clever piece of PR. And so in 1969, then, speaking of Jim McKenzie again, he continues to grow, and he becomes executive producer of ACT, in American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco.
Right. So, not in addition to producing touring shows across the country and Connecticut, Florida, and now the West Coast. So, and it's really exciting for the Peninsula Players because he has all of these connections. So, to bring
Yeah.
in these fresh shows, bring Broadway shows, find talent through his travels as well, and to bring them to Door County audiences.
Yeah, indeed. And in 1969, that was also the first year of the Joseph Jefferson Awards in Chicago.
It was. And one of our alumni who eventually did come to perform, Guy Burrell, was one of the founding members of that. And Bob Thompson was one of the first recipients of a supporting actor award for Sabrina Fair. So it was just a great acknowledgement for the work that he has done and the number of company members who have continued to receive nominations through that as well as awards,
Mhm.
including yourself, sir.
Indeed. And Rita Moreno, she won a Jeff Award that year for her role in The Rose Tattoo.
Mhm.
And another thing that happened at the end of that season, they were going to do The Price by Arthur Miller, but they canceled that.
They did, and they decided instead to extend the comedy that they were doing. I Can't Hear You When the Water's Running. And they did that for 2 weeks prior to doing the musical The Fantastics for 2 weeks. So for the first time, they're running two shows back to back for 2 weeks. And
Mhm.
I found that closer to what we're doing today. They're starting to get into accepting that a longer run is possible.
Yeah, and we wanted to close with in 1967 there was an editorial in the Door County Advocate, and it had a title "You Can Sink on Too Much Depth," and it talks a little bit about stuff that's very important to us today,
Mm.
and this is a little bit. Apparently, there was a reviewer who was critical of the quality or the type of material that the players was doing, thought it
Mhm.
was too light and everything, and that the plays lacked depth. But the editor says saying that the plays lack depth is a valid comment, but if it was meant as a criticism, it should be directed at all of society. I think, meaning that when people want better plays with more depth, then we will do them.
Mhm.
And he goes on to say that the Peninsula Players are professionals. They like a serious play with plenty of meat. At least one such show is put on every year, and box office caution is forgotten, which is something we have to deal with. We know that when we do dramas, then the ticket sales dip a little bit,
Yep.
but not always.
Not right. Yeah, it varies.
Yeah, because basically it depends on what plays are out there and
Mhm.
what in any one year. It's rare to find some really great plays happening. You don't come across Eugene O'Neill or Edward Albee or Arthur Miller every day.
Or the Silent Sky.
Right, Lauren
It's
Gunderson. Yeah.
yes. you know,
So anyway, it was an interesting editorial, and in it he says, summing up, then Door County is fortunate to have the opportunity to experience the powerful medium of live theater. The Players is a business. The personnel must temper their artistic desires with the desires of the vacationing public, and that's what we have to deal with. That's how it is, you
that's
know.
how it is. Yep.
We like putting plays of substance in there because we know there are lots of people who enjoy those, and
Mm-hmm.
it's also very satisfying for our company.
Yes.
So, Audie, thank you again.
Thanks,
Went through
Greg.
5 years,
Woohoo!
the highlights anyway.
Yeah,
And we will continue on next week and talk about some specific people in greater depth, right?
exactly.
Good. Well, thanks again.
Thanks, Greg. Have a good week.
Yes, and we will see you next time.